Lieutenant Commander Ta Wu stood at attention in the grand hall of the Terran Defense Force headquarters. Medals gleamed on his chest under the bright lights. General Park approached with a tight smile. "Lieutenant Commander, your service during the Battle of Orion has been exemplary. The Council wishes to reward you." Tai Wu nodded respectfully. "I only did my duty, sir." "Nonsense. Heroes deserve recognition." The general handed him a data chip. "Your reward awaits in Holding Bay 7. A Selenian female. Quite a rare specimen." Tai Wu's face remained neutral, but his stomach tightened. The practice of gifting captive aliens to decorated officers had begun 3 years into the war. He had never approved, but had stayed silent, until now when he would be directly involved. "Sir, with respect, this is not optional, Lieutenant Commander." General Park's smile disappeared. Refusing would be seen as rejecting the Council's generosity. "Not wise for your career." Tai Wu swallowed his objection. "I understand, sir." Later, Ta Wu stood outside Holding Bay 7, hesitating before placing his palm on the scanner. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, 2 guards flanked a slender figure with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. "Your reward, sir," one guard said, shoving the Selenian forward, fully processed and decontaminated. The alien woman stumbled but caught herself, standing tall despite the bindings on her wrists. Her eyes, large and deep purple, met his without wavering. "That will be all," Ta Wu told the guards. When they had gone, he approached the Selenian slowly. "I am Lieutenant Commander Ta Wu," he said, keeping his voice gentle. "What is your name?" The Selenian woman stared at him, silent and wary. Of course, she wouldn't understand Terran standard. Tai Wu removed a small translator device from his pocket and held it up for her to see. "This will help us talk," he explained uselessly, activating it. The device projected a soft blue light between them. "What is your name?" he repeated. After a moment, the Selenian spoke in a musical language. The translator processed her words. "I am Neri, daughter of the 3rd House of Lumina." Tai Wu nodded. "I'm going to remove your restraints now," he said, moving slowly to avoid frightening her. When he released the bindings, Neri rubbed her wrists but made no move to flee or attack. "Follow me," he said, leading her from the holding bay to his quarters in the officer's wing. His apartment was Spartan but comfortable. Neri stood just inside the door, taking in her surroundings with alert eyes. "You will sleep here," Ta Wu said, showing her to the guest room he rarely used. "This space is yours. I will not enter without permission." The translator conveyed his words. Neri's expression showed surprise and suspicion. "You do not wish to keep me in a cage?" The translator rendered her question. Tai Wu frowned. "No, you are not an animal." The other said, "I am property now." "Your property?" "I don't believe people can be property," Ta Wu replied. He gestured to the room. "There's a bathroom through that door. You can clean up if you wish. I'll find you some clothes that might fit." He turned to leave, but Neri's voice stopped him. "Why are you being kind? What do you want from me?" Tai Wu considered his answer carefully. "I don't want anything. This situation, it's not right. But for now, we both must make the best of it." Over the next few days, they established an uneasy coexistence. Tai Wu provided Neri with clothing, food, and access to entertainment screens. He noticed she was drawn to books and historical records, often spending hours reading. A week passed before real communication began. Tai Wu returned from duty to find Neri waiting for him in the living area. "I want to learn your language," she said through the translator. "It would be more efficient than relying on this device." Tai Wu agreed, and their lessons began that evening. Neri proved to be a quick learner, grasping concepts rapidly. As her Terran vocabulary grew, so did Ta Wu's understanding of Selenian culture. "I was a scholar on Lumina," she told him one evening, now speaking halting but understandable Terran. I study ancient texts and star patterns. An astronomer? Ta Wu asked. Yes, but more. We believe stars tell stories of the past and future. I was mapping the Great Crossing when your ships came. Tai Wu felt shame wash over him. I'm sorry. Neri studied him with her purple eyes. You fight, but you do not hate us. I joined to protect Earth, he explained. I was told Selenians planned to invade our colonies. A lie, Neri said simply. We never wanted war. Your kind came to our system, started mining our sacred moons without permission. This contradicted everything in his military briefings, but somehow rang true. Tai Wu found himself believing her. Their conversations continued over meals. Tai Wu learned that Selenians were empathic, able to sense the emotions of those around them. This made Neri's captivity particularly cruel. She constantly felt the fear, hatred, or desire of her captors. With you, it is different, she admitted. You feel sorry and curious. I am curious, Ta Wu said. Everything we're taught about Selenians seems wrong. One evening, Ta Wu returned late from an officers' meeting to find his apartment door open. Inside, Commander Jun stood uncomfortably close to Neri, who was backed against a wall, her silver skin pale with fear. Ah, Ta Wu, Jun said, not moving away. Your pet is quite beautiful. Perhaps you'd consider sharing. Commander, Ta Wu said coldly, you're in my quarters uninvited. Come now, we're all comrades here. These specimens are meant to be enjoyed. Tai Wu stepped between them. Neri is under my protection. Please leave. Jun's face hardened. Getting attached to alien scum is dangerous. Lieutenant Commander, remember where your loyalties lie. After Jun left, Neri trembled slightly. He wanted to hurt me. He won't touch you, Ta Wu promised. I won't allow it. That night, unable to sleep, Ta Wu faced an uncomfortable truth. The war, his career, the very foundation of the conflict with the Selenians. Everything he had fought for might be built on lies. And Neri, meant to be a reward, had instead become his teacher, opening his eyes to a reality he could no longer ignore. Morning sunlight streamed through the viewport of Ta Wu's quarters, casting golden patterns across Neri's silver skin as she sat cross-legged on the floor. Her eyes were closed, her breathing even. Tai Wu watched from the doorway, reluctant to interrupt what appeared to be some form of meditation. After several minutes, Neri opened her eyes and noticed him. Good morning, she said in her increasingly fluent Turan. I didn't want to disturb you, Ta Wu said. What were you doing? Emotional centering, she explained, rising gracefully to her feet. It helps block out the feelings of others. Tai Wu set a mug of tea on the table for her. You mentioned your empathic abilities before. How does that work exactly? Neri wrapped her slender fingers around the mug, enjoying its warmth. We sense emotions like you sense smells or sounds. They come to us without effort. That sounds overwhelming, Ta Wu said. It can be. In the holding cells. She paused, her expression darkening. Hundreds of captives, all frightened, angry, grieving. The guards feeling hatred, curiosity, or worse. It was like drowning in a sea of pain. Tai Wu felt a pang of guilt. And here, with me. Neri's gaze met his. Your emotions are quieter, conflicted, but not cruel. It makes it easier to think, to be myself. Their days fell into a pattern. Tai Wu would attend to his military duties during the day while Neri remained in his quarters, reading everything she could access about Earth and human history. In the evenings, they would share meals and conversation, each learning from the other. One night, Ta Wu returned to find Neri studying old star charts on his datapad. This is my home system, she said, pointing to a cluster of stars. The human maps label it GS 779, but we call it the cradle. It's beautiful, Ta Wu said, sitting beside her. It was. Before the mining ships came. Her voice held no accusation, just sadness. Tell me what happened. From your perspective. Neri swiped through the star charts, finding an image of a luminescent moon. This is Selenus, our most sacred place, where we believe our ancestors first gained consciousness. 10 Earth years ago, human ships arrived and began extracting minerals without any attempt at communication. That's not what our reports said. Tawu frowned. We were told Selenians attacked unprovoked when peaceful mining operations began in unclaimed space. Unclaimed. Nari's voice rose slightly. We have lived in the cradle for thousands of years. The minerals they took were part of our sacred sites. I'm sorry, Tawu said simply. There was little else he could say. As weeks passed, their understanding deepened. Tawu found himself drawn to Nari's perspective on human culture. She saw beauty and contradiction in things he took for granted. In turn, he learned about Selenian art, philosophy, and social structures so different from his own. Their peaceful routine was shattered one afternoon when Tawu was called to an emergency briefing. He returned to find his door forced open and Commander Jun inside with 2 junior officers. Nari was cornered, a dark bruise forming on her silver cheek. What is the meaning of this? Tawu demanded, stepping into his quarters. Jun turned with a smirk. Just inspecting your accommodations, Lieutenant Commander. Ensuring proper handling of military assets. Get out. Now. Tawu's voice was deadly quiet. You've forgotten what she is, Jun said. An enemy specimen. Property of the Terran Defense Force. Not your pet. Not your friend. She is under my protection, Tawu said, moving to stand beside Nari. Any harm to her is an assault on my property and honor. If that's how you insist on seeing her, would you challenge me on that, Commander? Jun's face darkened. You're making a mistake, Tawu. Sympathizing with the enemy. I wonder what General Park would think about that. Feel free to ask him, Tawu replied, not backing down. Now leave my quarters. After they left, Tawu gently examined Nari's bruised cheek. I'm sorry this happened. You risk much by protecting me, she said quietly. It's the right thing to do. That night, they sat on the small balcony overlooking the military complex. Stars dotted the sky above them, reminding Nari of home. Among my people, she said softly, relationships are formed through emotional harmony. When 2 Selenians are compatible, their emotional fields naturally align. Like resonating frequencies. Tawu asked. Yes, exactly. Nari smiled. We choose our partners based on this resonance. No one can force a bond. It must be freely given and received. That sounds more civilized than some human relationships, Tawu admitted. Your Commander Jun, his emotions are chaotic, violent. Many of your military leaders are similar. Nari gazed up at the stars. Yet you are different. You feel deeply, but with clarity. I was raised in a small fishing village, Tawu explained. My grandfather taught me that true strength comes from harmony with yourself and others. I joined the Defense Force to protect, not to conquer. Your grandfather was wise, Nari said. In Selenian culture, he would have been honored as a truth speaker. Tawu looked at her curiously. Can you teach me more about your culture? Not just the facts, but how it feels to be Selenian. Nari considered this request. I can try. She held out her hand, palm up. In our tradition, shared understanding begins with touch. Hesitantly, Tawu placed his hand over hers. Her skin was cooler than human temperature, smooth like polished metal yet soft and alive. Close your eyes, she instructed. Breathe slowly. Try to sense beyond your own thoughts. Tawu did as she asked. At first, he felt nothing unusual, just the quiet night air and the warmth of their connection. Then gradually, he sensed something new. A gentle presence at the edge of his consciousness, like hearing music from another room. I feel something, he whispered, eyes still closed. It's like calmness, but also sadness, and something else. Hope, Nari said softly. You're sensing my hope. When Tawu opened his eyes, he saw Neri looking at him with wonder. "Few non-Selenians can perceive our emotional projections," she explained. "Your grandfather's teachings served you well." That night marked a turning point. Tawu no longer saw Neri as someone he needed to protect out of duty or compassion. She was now someone he respected as an equal, someone whose perspective had value, someone he genuinely wanted to understand. And somewhere in the space between their two worlds, something new began to grow. A bridge of understanding that neither had believed possible when a captive Selenian woman had first been delivered as a decorated officer's reward. Taiwu returned from duty with a heavy heart. The secure briefing had left him shaken. He found Neri in their shared living space, reading from a datapad. She looked up as he entered, immediately sensing his distress. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting aside her reading. Taiwu sank into a chair, struggling to find words. There was a classified briefing today. All officers with Selenian rewards were required to attend. Neri's silver skin seemed to dim slightly, and, in 3 days, all Selenian captives are to be transferred to a research facility in the Arcturus system. He couldn't meet her eyes. "They're calling it the final solution to the Selenian question." "What does that mean?" Neri asked, though her voice suggested she already knew. "Experiments, invasive research. They want to study your empathic abilities, find ways to use them as weapons." Tawu's fists clenched, or blocked them completely. Neri stood perfectly still, her face a mask. For a Selenian, losing our empathic sense would be worse than death. It would be like blinding a human or cutting off their limbs. Tawu finished. "I know." That night, after Neri had retreated to her room, Tawu sat at his console. His high-security clearance gave him access to files most officers couldn't see. He began searching, looking for information about the Arcturus facility. What he found horrified him. Previous Selenian subjects had not survived the experiments. The researchers wrote coldly about acceptable losses and necessary sacrifices. Worse, he discovered files dating back to before the war began. Plans for the exploitation of Selenian worlds that had been drafted years before the supposed unprovoked attack that had started the conflict. It had all been a lie. The mining operations had been the first phase of a planned invasion. When the Selenians had protested the desecration of their sacred moon, their actions had been twisted into an excuse for all-out war. Dawn found Tawu still at his console, eyes red from reading through the night. He had made copies of the most damning files, evidence of his government's deception. As morning light filled the room, Neri emerged from her quarters. "You haven't slept," she observed. "No." Tawu gestured to the screen. "I've been learning the truth about this war." "And now you know," she said simply. "I can't let them take you to that facility." Tawu stood, stretching his stiff muscles. "I need to think of something." That afternoon, Tawu was summoned to General Park's office. The general sat behind his desk, Commander Jun standing at his side with a smug expression. "Lieutenant Commander Tawu," the general began, "Commander Jun has brought some concerns to my attention regarding your relationship with your Selenian specimen." Tawu stood at attention. "Sir, he reports that you're treating the alien as a guest rather than a prisoner, that you engage in lengthy conversations with it, and that you prevented proper inspection of the specimen. Commander Jun and his officers forced entry to my quarters and physically assaulted the Selenian," Tawu replied, keeping his voice neutral. The commander was following protocol. General Park said dismissively, "These specimens require regular examination. With respect, sir, I disagree with both the protocol and the terminology. Selenians are sentient beings, not specimens." Jun sneered. "Listen to yourself. You sound like one of those peace protesters." The general studied Tawu carefully. "Your service record is exemplary, Lieutenant Commander. Don't throw away your career over an alien. The transfer order stands. All Selenians will be transported to Arcturus in 2 days." "Sir, I believe the treatment of Selenian prisoners violates Section 7 of the Interstellar Ethics Code that Earth itself helped establish. Those codes don't apply to enemy combatants, the general replied smoothly. Most captured Selenians, including Nari, were civilians, not combatants. Ta Wu took a deep breath. And I have evidence that the Terran government provoked this conflict under false pretenses. The room went silent. General Park's face darkened. That's a serious accusation, Lieutenant Commander. I have the files to support it, sir. Commander Jun stepped forward. This is treason. He should be arrested immediately. The general held up a hand. Not yet. Lieutenant Commander Ta Wu, I'm giving you one chance to reconsider your position. The Selenian will be transferred as ordered. Your career, indeed, your freedom, depends on your compliance. Tai Wu stood straighter. Then I'm afraid we have a problem, sir, because I cannot in good conscience allow Nari to be sent to her death. You have no choice, Jun sneered. Actually, I do. Ta Wu met the general's gaze steadily. Under Terran law, a citizen's spouse cannot be seized for research purposes without both parties' consent. Section 12 of the Civil Protection Act. General Park frowned. What are you suggesting? I intend to marry Nari under Terran civil law. As my legal spouse, she would be protected from transfer to Arcturus. Marry an alien. Jun spluttered. That's unusual, but not illegal, Ta Wu finished. I've already consulted with a civil rights attorney. General Park leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. You would throw away everything, your career, your reputation, possibly your freedom, for this alien. For justice, sir, and yes, for Nari. The general dismissed him with orders not to leave the base or contact civilians. Tai Wu returned to his quarters, where Nari waited anxiously. They know, she said as soon as he entered. Yes, I told them I intend to marry you under Terran law. He sat heavily on the couch. It's the only legal protection I can offer. Nari sat beside him. In my culture, marriage is a sacred bond, formed only when emotional resonance is perfect between partners. I understand. Ta Wu looked at her earnestly. This would be a legal arrangement only, to prevent your transfer. I would expect nothing from you. Yet you risk everything for me. Nari's purple eyes studied him. Why? Because it's right, he said simply. And because I've come to care what happens to you. Nari was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out, her silver hand taking his. Among my people, true bonds begin with truth and sacrifice. You have shown both. That evening, Ta Wu contacted Dr. Hana, a civilian chaplain who occasionally served on the base. She agreed to perform the ceremony despite the risks, believing in Ta Wu's cause. The small ceremony took place in Ta Wu's quarters the next morning. Dr. Hana brought the necessary documentation for a civil marriage. As she began the simple ceremony, the door burst open. Commander Jun entered with 4 armed guards. Lieutenant Commander Ta Wu, you are ordered to surrender the Selenian specimen immediately. Tai Wu stepped in front of Nari protectively. We're in the middle of a legal civil ceremony. This farce is not recognized by military authority, Jun snapped. Dr. Hana, though frightened, spoke up. As an authorized civil official, I must inform you that interfering with a legal marriage ceremony is a violation of Terran law, military jurisdiction notwithstanding. Jun hesitated, clearly not wanting to create a civilian legal incident. Complete the ceremony, Doctor, Ta Wu said firmly. With trembling hands, Dr. Hana continued. Ta Wu and Nari exchanged simple vows. When they were pronounced legally married under Terran law, Dr. Hana quickly recorded the certificate and transmitted it to the civilian registry. It's done, she said. They are legally wed. Commander Jun's face contorted with rage. This changes nothing. The transfer order stands. I'm afraid it changes everything. Ta Wu replied calmly, holding Nari's hand. and I'm prepared to take this to the highest civilian courts if necessary, along with the classified files showing the true origins of this war." Jun stared at him in shock, then stormed out, ordering his guards to secure the door from outside. "You are both very brave," Dr. Hana said as she gathered her things, "but also in great danger." After she left, Ta-Wu and Neri stood in silence, the reality of their situation sinking in. "What happens now?" Neri asked softly. "Now we fight," Ta-Wu replied, squeezing her hand. "Not with weapons, but with truth. And we see if justice still means anything in this world." The military guards posted outside Ta-Wu's quarters were changed every 8 hours. They'd brought meals twice daily, sliding trays through a small opening in the door. Otherwise, Ta-Wu and Neri were completely isolated. No visitors, no communications, no access to the information network. Day 5 of house arrest, Ta-Wu noted, marking another line on the small calendar he had made. "At least they haven't separated us." Neri sat cross-legged on the floor, her silver skin catching the morning light. "They fear what you might reveal if they treat us too harshly." Ta-Wu nodded. Before their confinement began, he had entrusted copies of the classified files to Dr. Hana with instructions to release them if anything happened to him or Neri. It was their only insurance. "The tribunal will be scheduled soon," he said, sitting beside her. "We should prepare." Neri studied his face. "You are worried, but not afraid." "I'm worried about what they might do to you," he admitted. "My career is already over. I accepted that when I made my choice." "Our choice," Neri corrected gently. She extended her hand, palm up, a gesture that had become familiar between them. "In my culture, a marriage is more than a legal document. It is a joining of spirits." Ta-Wu placed his hand over hers. "Tell me about Selenian marriages." "We call it soul binding," Neri explained. "It begins with the ritual of truth, where each person shares their deepest fears and highest hopes. Then comes the resonance, where we attempt to align our emotional fields." "Can we try?" Ta-Wu asked. "I mean, I know I'm not Selenian, but—" Neri's purple eyes widened in surprise. "You wish to attempt a Selenian bonding." "Our marriage began as a legal strategy," Ta-Wu said, "but that doesn't mean it can't become something more genuine." That evening, they sat facing each other in the dim light of their quarters. Neri had arranged small lights in a circle around them, mimicking the traditional setting for a Selenian bonding ceremony. "First, the truth," she said softly. "I will begin." She took a deep breath. "My deepest fear is that I will never see my home again, that my people will be destroyed or forever changed by this conflict. My highest hope is that our two species might one day understand each other, that this war might end not with one side defeating the other, but with both recognizing their common spirit." Ta-Wu listened intently, then spoke his own truth. "My deepest fear is that I've lived a lie, fighting for a cause that was corrupt from the beginning, that everything I believed about duty and honor was just words used to justify cruelty. My highest hope is to make amends, to help build something better than what came before." Neri smiled. "Now, the resonance. Close your eyes and focus on your breathing. Try to sense beyond yourself, as you did before." Ta-Wu closed his eyes. This time, the connection came more easily. He could sense Neri's presence, a gentle, luminous energy that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. He concentrated, trying to match his own breathing to hers. "I can feel you," he whispered. "It's like music." "Yes," Neri's voice was barely audible. "Now, imagine that music becoming one melody instead of two separate ones." Ta-Wu focused, visualizing their separate rhythms blending together. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, he felt a shift, as if something had clicked into place. A wave of emotions washed over him. Neri's courage, her homesickness, her growing affection for him. All as clear as if they were his own feelings. His eyes flew open in shock. Neri was staring at him, her expression mirroring his surprise. "You did it," she whispered. "I've never heard of a human achieving resonance before. What does it mean?" Ta Wu asked, still reeling from the experience. "It means our souls are compatible." Neri's silver cheeks flushed with a pearly iridescence, a Selenian blush. "In my culture, we would now be truly bound, beyond any legal document." Outside their isolated world, news of Ta Wu's defiant marriage had spread like wildfire. Dr. Hana, true to her word, had not released the classified files, but she had spoken to friends about the brave officer who married a Selenian prisoner to protect her from inhumane experimentation. The story reached civilian news networks. With few official details available, speculation ran wild. Some portrayed Ta Wu as a traitor, others as a hero standing up for interstellar ethics. The most romantic versions painted the marriage as a love story that transcended species boundaries. A protest formed outside the military base. At first just a handful of peace activists, it grew daily as more citizens questioned the war that had dragged on for years. Signs reading "Truth about Selenian War" and "Respect all sentient life" appeared. Inside their quarters, Ta Wu and Neri remained unaware of their growing fame. Their days were spent in conversation, learning about each other's worlds and customs. Neri taught Ta Wu Selenian meditation techniques to strengthen their emotional bond. In return, he shared stories from his childhood in the fishing village, painting verbal pictures of Earth's oceans and forests. On the 10th day of their confinement, the door to their quarters opened unexpectedly. Instead of the usual guards, a stern-faced woman in a civilian suit entered. "Lieutenant Commander Ta Wu, I am Director G from the Civilian Oversight Committee. I'm here to inform you that your tribunal has been scheduled for tomorrow at 900 hours. Ta Wu stood at attention, out of habit. "Thank you for the information, Director." Director G glanced at Neri, who stood calmly beside Ta Wu. "Is it true that you married this person to prevent her transfer?" "Initially, yes," Ta Wu admitted. "But our relationship has evolved since then." The director studied them both. "You should know that your situation has become quite public. There are protesters gathered outside this base. Some high-ranking officials are calling for your court-martial, while others suggest you should be heard out." "And what do you think, Director?" Neri asked quietly. Director G seemed startled to be addressed directly by the Selenian. "I think that things are rarely as simple as they first appear. The tribunal will expect you to defend your actions, Lieutenant Commander. Be prepared." After she left, Ta Wu and Neri embraced. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said, "I want you to know that I don't regret any of this." "Nor do I," Neri replied, her forehead resting against his. "In the short time we've had together, I've learned more about humans than in all my previous studies. Not all of your kind are driven by conquest. And I've learned that everything I was taught about Selenians was wrong." Ta Wu held her tighter. "If we can change, maybe others can too." That night, they performed the Selenian ritual of courage, drawing strength from their growing bond. As they sat in peaceful meditation, their emotional fields perfectly aligned, neither could have predicted how their small act of defiance had already begun to change the course of two civilizations. Outside, the crowd of protesters had grown to thousands, their voices rising in the night. Truth, justice, peace. The tribunal chamber buzzed with tension. 3 senior military judges sat behind a raised panel, their faces stern. To one side, a group of civilian observers watched silently, representatives from the Oversight Committee, the press, and even a few diplomats from neutral worlds. Ta Wu stood at attention, dressed in his full uniform for what would likely be the last time. Neri stood beside him, her silver skin gleaming under the harsh lights. They had been permitted to enter together, a small victory that gave Ta Wu hope. "Lieutenant Commander Ta Wu," began Admiral Choi, the head judge, "you stand accused of insubordination, misuse of classified information, and conduct unbecoming an officer. How do you plead? Not guilty on all charges, Admiral, Tai Wu replied firmly. I acted in accordance with the highest principles of the Terran Defense Force, to protect innocent life and uphold justice. A murmur ran through the chamber. Admiral Choi frowned. You directly disobeyed orders regarding the transfer of enemy aliens. You married a Selenian prisoner to circumvent military protocol. These facts are not in dispute. No, Admiral, they are not, Ta Wu agreed. But I request permission to present evidence that will explain my actions. After a brief conference with the other judges, Admiral Choi nodded. Proceed. Tai Wu stepped forward and placed a data chip in the tribunal console. This contains classified documents revealing that the Terran government deliberately provoked the conflict with the Selenians. It shows that our military leaders knew the mining operations were violating sacred Selenian sites and that the Selenian response was defensive, not aggressive. The documents appeared on the large screen behind him, damning evidence of deception at the highest levels. Reports detailing plans for exploiting Selenian resources, dismissing their primitive religious concerns about their sacred moon. Orders to respond with overwhelming force to any resistance. A hush fell over the room as the documents scrolled past. Admiral Choi's face had gone pale. Where did you obtain these files? He demanded. Through my security clearance, Admiral. Everything you see is from our own military database. Next, Ta Wu displayed the plans for the Arcturus Research Facility, clinical descriptions of the experiments planned for the Selenian specimens, the expected casualty rates, the ultimate goal of weaponizing or neutralizing their empathic abilities. This is why I could not allow Nari or any other Selenian to be transferred, Ta Wu explained. It would have been a death sentence, or worse. He turned to face the entire chamber. I swore an oath to protect Earth and its principles. Those principles include respect for sentient life and basic ethical treatment of all beings. The plans for the Selenians violated everything we claim to stand for. Admiral Choi leaned forward. And your marriage to the prisoner, was that truly necessary? Tai Wu reached for Nari's hand. Initially, it was a legal strategy to prevent her transfer, but since then, it has become much more. He looked at Nari with genuine affection. We have performed the Selenian bonding rituals. We have achieved resonance, a merging of emotional fields that Selenians consider the true basis of marriage. This is unprecedented, one of the other judges remarked. Yes, Ta Wu agreed. But perhaps that is what we need, something unprecedented to break the cycle of hostility between our peoples. Nari stepped forward. May I speak? She asked quietly. Admiral Choi hesitated, then nodded. I was a scholar on my world. Nari began, her voice clear and strong. I studied the stars and the ancient texts of my people. When humans first appeared in our system, many of us were curious, eager to learn about you. We had no desire for war. She looked around the chamber. Through my bond with Ta Wu, I have experienced human emotions directly. You feel as deeply as we do. You love, fear, hope, and dream as we do. The differences between us are small compared to what we share. Her words seemed to touch something in the observers. Even some of the military personnel looked moved. The tribunal recessed for deliberation. Ta Wu and Nari waited in a small antechamber, hands still linked, drawing strength from each other. Whatever they decide, Nari whispered, we have spoken truth. Yes, Ta Wu agreed. And truth has power, even when it's not welcome. 2 hours later, they were called back. The chamber was now packed, word having spread about the dramatic evidence presented. Admiral Choi looked tired but resolved. Lieutenant Commander Ta Wu, this tribunal has reached its decision. The evidence you presented raises serious concerns that extend far beyond this case. We have forwarded the documents to the Civilian Oversight Committee for further investigation. He took a deep breath. As for your actions, we find that while you did violate military protocol, You did so in service of higher ethical principles. Therefore, you will be honorably discharged from the Terran Defense Force, effective immediately." Murmurs filled the room. It was neither a full condemnation nor a complete vindication. Regarding the Selenian named Nari, the Admiral continued, "We recognize your legal marriage under civil law. You will both be granted permission to relocate to the neutral colony of New Horizon, where civilian authorities have agreed to offer you sanctuary." Taewoo bowed deeply. "Thank you, Admiral." "Do not thank me yet, Taewoo," Admiral Choi said grimly. "Your revelations have shaken the foundations of this conflict. There will be resistance. Some will call you a traitor despite our ruling today. I understand the risks, sir. Then I wish you both good fortune. This tribunal is adjourned." 1 year later, Taewoo stood on the observation deck of the Cultural Understanding Center on New Horizon. Through the large windows, he could see the first Selenian diplomatic vessel approaching the colony's spaceport, the first official delegation in over a decade. "They're finally here," he said as Neri joined him at the window. She smiled, her silver hand resting on her slightly rounded belly. "Just in time. Our child should know both worlds." Their marriage and Neri's pregnancy, the first known human Selenian child, had become powerful symbols of the possibility of harmony between their species. The evidence Taewoo had presented at his tribunal had indeed sparked investigations, leading eventually to the resignation of several high-ranking officials and a complete reassessment of the conflict. The path to peace had not been easy. Hardliners on both sides had resisted the change in policy. But the tide of public opinion had turned, with citizens on Earth and its colonies demanding truth and accountability. Taewoo and Neri had built their Cultural Understanding Center from nothing, starting with simple classes where Neri taught humans about Selenian culture and Taewoo explained human customs to the few Selenians living on New Horizon. Now, as the diplomatic vessel docked, they prepared to welcome a new chapter in relations between their peoples. "Do you ever regret it?" Nari asked softly. "Giving up your career, your home?" Taewoo shook his head. "I found a new purpose. A better one." He placed his hand over hers, feeling the gentle movement of their child. "And I found you." Below them, the spaceport doors opened as the Selenian delegates stepped onto New Horizon soil. A new beginning, born from one man's refusal to accept injustice and one woman's courage to trust across the boundaries of worlds.